welcome back to another conversation around our Workpapers tool, where today we're going to discuss how to go about setting ranges into the data set. So in previous discussions where we talked about getting data out of one source tax provision and setting data into one source tax provision, we were more focused on individual line items. So for everything that we were setting or getting, we had formulas to do them individually. So in this session, we are going to talk about a little bit more of mass data loading. So I'm going to work on my temp range setting this time. And you will notice that I actually have up top the section that I want to push into the software. And it looks pretty familiar. And the reason it does is I actually copied this section over from our Pound UTD screen so that you can see much of the same information that you were required to put in if we tried to import the data into the software using the spreadsheet import is what we are going to be using here with a little bit of a difference. This tab only allows you to import federal temporary items into the software. We cannot use that template to load anything state related. So the difference is that with this range push, we are able to use it for either our federal national jurisdiction, or if we have to do any kind of states, we would simply continue, trailing down. Let's say we were going to put something into Arizona. So, we would have our unit 100, Arizona, whatever the code is, and then we would keep going from there. So we've got this additional column for jurisdiction. And we also have 2 additional columns for state ending and beginning rates in the eventuality that we needed to override a particular line item. Okay, so I am just going to go ahead and I'm going to build the push, and I'm going to use our Workpaper tool. So this is our wizard basically, and inadvertently I selected get when really what I wanted to do was set. So we'll just quickly make the change there. And if you remember, in order for us to get to this screen, we have to be registered into the software. So I'm in my GTM demo instance in the sandbox, and you will know that just by seeing your user ID up and your account name. So I'm going to put something into the tax provision data set. And I am going to select my range, temporary differences. And you'll notice there are quite a few things that we can push in. We can put all these various things in individually, but I just want to put in the topmost one, which will allow me to set all of these individual things. So if I link, I've linked. So if I click on my typewriter just to see what it is, I actually linked back over to my lead sheet. And then I'm going to hit next. Okay, so my formula cell is already in C2. As you can see, it populated, but my range target is really, I'm going to highlight that. My range target really needs to be all of this. And I'm going to put a few extra rows too, so that you don't have to, just in case we've got additional ones, it's already included in there. I am going to check this box that's called column mapping because, as you could see, my headers are kind of not in the typical order that they would be on the unit temp diff tab. So I'm going to just go ahead and select what my individual types of items are going for each column. So column, my unit code is in F, my jurisdiction, my transaction description is the actual code. Column I has my tag letter. J has my transaction type. Class, subclass. Column L, my activity is in column AM. So I kind of swapped my activity with my beginning balance because that was the first thing I wanted to get in. balance sheet. In column Q are my notes. Beginning rate. And then I'm just going to scroll down. State beginning rate and state ending rate. Okay, and I'm done. So I've got my ready to push. I am going to go ahead because, as I mentioned earlier, I have my settings where I have disabled my automatic pushes. So I have to manually send my data through. So I'm gonna just do select send data. Okay, and just like that, it is there in the software. So if I was to go in to OTP, I'm going to go into my review and edit screen, my temp differences. And here are the 3 items I just pushed. The default subclass, current year activity. And you can see it says that my data source was Workpapers. Okay, so I want to show you how we can get data out of the software as well, instead of having to come into OTP and export from this screen, or going to the My Data Sets and doing a data set export. So for this one, I'm actually going to do range get. And then I have a few other ones that I would also like to show you that we can get. I am going to get my range temporary differences. Data. So for my unit, I'm actually going to hit the drop down here just so that you can see that when we are pulling range data or calculated data out of the software, it appends the name of the entity with the entity code as well, versus when you're setting, all it asks for is the entity code. So very important to know, if you are building your workbooks, you will have to append, and I will show you where I'm actually doing that in my schedule. But you will have to append a tilde along with the unit name together. Okay. I am going to select all perpetual just because you know, I don't want to have to keep modifying this particular workbook for the pull. Tags don't matter, and I'm going to pull all perpetual as well on my classes, and similarly for my subclasses. I'm going to hit next, and my target range, I am just going to put it here. So unlike your other get with the individual get, where you're you can get into the same cell that you have your formula in, we can't do that with a range. You have to select a separate cell to put the information in. So I'm going to just retrieve my data. And you will see, let me just format this a little bit here. This will probably look very familiar to you, because in essence, what it is our unit screen that I was just in earlier. And it's just bringing in all of the data for all line items, all classes. You can see it's got your timing difference, your entity. It's got the beginning balance, the activity, the deferred only, your balance sheet only, and then it also gives you the ending balance. Over to the right, it has the indicator if we've overridden any rates, and which would be a 1, instead of a 0 if we have any override rates, and then the rates that's here is actually your base default rate, since we haven't overridden anything in this instance. So there are a couple other ones that I've kind of loaded into this workbook, kind of pre-populated. I am just going to retrieve them again. If you notice, I've highlighted all of them. So I'm just going to do a quick retrieve on everything. And what I have is a separate worksheet that holds all of my retrieves. So I've just done a retrieve of the 4 additional lead sheets that we have. It's our provision, the deferred balances, the payable lead sheet, and also our trial balance. So if I go over to here, my retrieve, you'll be able to see where I am basically dumping all of that data. So the provision will give you, starting with your pre-tax book income, it's actually your book to tax walk. It will list all of your perms based on how you entered them into the software, and all of your temporary differences, your unit federal tax rate. It looks exactly like the tax provision report. Deferred lead sheet is a little bit different from that temp diff range that I just brought in the sense that this one gives you your ending balance in pre-tax amount and tax affected amount. And as you can see, it will run the columns down. There is actually a column that says what type it is. Is it the federal? Is it the state calc? Is it the FBOS? And a separate column that gives the jurisdiction as well. And then we also have the payables lead sheet that we can also pull out of the software. And that's giving you everything that got posted, starting with all of your classifications. So if you had a beginning balance, it would pull in as well. But the auto posting from the provision, and this is doing it by jurisdiction as well. And then we also have a trial balance that we can get out of the system. Now, all of these we can retrieve for the unit specific level, or we can also do subcon as well. So as I was mentioning earlier, I am actually building this into the workbook as well, so that if I have to retrieve calculated data, I can use this workbook either to do individual calculated data, or I can also use it for subcon. So if I was to select the subcon and just kind of give it a name, you will see it will append the wording subcon in front of it, whatever name I give it, which is needed for the polls. So you are able to get mass data using ranges, and similarly do pushes. With the ranges, you can pull or push up to 200,000 lines of data at any one time, versus your individual gets and sets where you're limited to 3,400 pulls and pushes per time within the workbook. So you're not limited to 3,400 pulls or pushes in the workbook, but if you're trying to push at a time, that's the max. So using the range sets or the range pulls is a way for you to be able to get a lot of data into and out of your workbook at the same time. So that's it in terms of work paper ranges. I hope this was helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you on another session. Thank you.